We've entered in the collections representative and we've set up the basic functionality required in order to be able to run AR and Collections Manager. So now it's time to generate our first exception list. So right now, since we haven't run it, if we go to the exception list, you'll see that it's empty. In fact, there's a couple places where we're going to be populating data. And the other one is in the customer setup, which this will also be populated once we run the generate and update routine. So let's run that now. So we go to generate and update. Now this should be run automatically using job queue functions every night. It's very important because the data in the exception list does not update automatically. It only updates when this is run. So this needs to be run each day. So we go in and run generate and update. Now, under normal circumstances, these two fields are left blank. As time goes on and you generate more data, it's not necessary to look back at all the way to the very first day that you use Business Central. So when we run generate and update, without a date in here, it's going to go back to the very first transaction in the customer ledger entry table, which is fine for the first couple years, but after 2 years, it's no longer necessary to look back that far. So once you get into more than 2 years worth of history, you may want to put a date in here that says don't look at anything older than whatever date is in here. Maybe it's a good idea to update this each January 1st. So move it one year forward. The customer number is if you have a large customer and you've made a bunch of entries and applications and you want to see how that's going to affect your data, you can say I want to run generate and update just on a single customer number. But again, normally you'll leave these two fields blank and you just click OK. Now, this is the demo database, and it's pretty small. It only takes a second to run. Uh, the more data you have in the database, the longer it's going to take. Normally, it won't take more than 5 or 10 seconds in the beginning, but I have some customers who have hundreds of millions of entries in their customer ledger entry table, and it can take an hour or so. Please note, very important, while generate and update exceptions is running, the customer ledger entry table will be locked and nobody will be able to post anything. No posted sales orders, sales shipments, nothing will be able to be posted while it's running, which is why we suggest that you set it up with a job queue to run at night. So now we have the exception list. Let's run one other calculation that should be run not as frequently, and that is payment class calculations. Payment classes are a tool to be able to categorize your customers by their average payment history. So if we go into payment classes, this was set up automatically. We're saying in this situation that payment class number 1 is good. On average, good paying customers are no more than 5 days late. Fair paying customers are more than 5 days but less than 25 days. Chronically late customers are 26 days or more. Now you can edit these to be whatever you want. This is the default setup that gets created when you push the button to initialize the setup data. If in your opinion these don't represent your company, feel free to go into manage, edit list, and change them to be whatever you do want. But for now, we're going to use these values in order to be able to show the information about the customer's average payment history. So we go to AR and collections, and again, this also can be run using job queue. Not necessary to run it any more frequently than once a week. Maybe once a month is enough. What it's going to do is show you changes in customers' payment history, their average payment history, so that if they start off paying really well, but they start running into some financial difficulties and they start slowing down their payment, then they will transition from a good paying customer to a fair paying customer. On the other hand, you may get customers that you're working with that move from chronically late to good paying customers. So you want to be able to track those changes for information purposes. So we go to payment class calculation and we say we want to recalculate payment classes. Recalculating payment classes will display, there isn't any data, so we don't worry about that. We can set filters here if we want to, but we're not going to set any filters at this point. And it now generates its first pass based on some setup criteria that we will discuss in the very last video. So the final step of this is to update the payment classes to customer history. Done. Now, you remember when we first looked at this, we looked at the exception list and it was empty, but not anymore. We also looked at customer setup. Now, customer setup is a collection of all of the settings that we created from the initialize function, but this allows us to be able to go in and edit for individual companies. It's also the place where you can specify a collections rep. So automatically, we've assigned the default collections rep, John. But we can change that here to be whoever we want. So you can open up an account and say, nope, this is not John's. Or John can open the account up. It was assigned to him and he said, nope, this one belongs to Mary. So we set this to be Mary. It says, do you want to change John to Mary effective for future exceptions only? Or do you want to change it for existing exceptions as well as future? Your choice. So we're going to update it for everything. And now we've assigned Mary to this account. So the generate and update exceptions is something that should be run periodically, like every day. And infrequently, you'll want to update the payment class calculations, which we'll see in another video where that information is displayed and what you can do with it. We'll also talk about it at the very end when we get into the details of debt collection setup. That concludes the video for generate and update exceptions and payment class calculations.